They told me the old house across the street was empty. But last night, I saw a light in the window. And then, someone called my name. Claire Morgan had always dreamed of living in a quiet neighborhood. After years of working in the busy city, she finally found a small house on a peaceful street. It was perfect, or so she thought. From her front porch, she could see an old, broken house across the street. Its windows were dark, its roof looked ready to fall, and the paint was peeling off the walls. It looked like no one had lived there for many years. On her first day, Claire greeted a few neighbors. They were friendly, but every time she asked about the house across the street, their smiles faded. One older woman whispered, "Stay away from that place. It's better if you don't ask." Another neighbor quickly changed the subject and walked away. Claire found their reaction strange. It was just an empty house, right? That evening, while drinking tea by her window, Claire stared at the old house. The silence around it was heavy, almost unnatural. No birds landed on its roof. No trees moved near it, even when the wind blew. It felt wrong, but Claire told herself she was imagining things. Later that night, as she was getting ready for bed, Claire heard something faint outside. It sounded like a whisper. She froze and listened again. Nothing. She laughed nervously and told herself it was just the wind. But when she looked out the window one last time, her heart skipped a beat. For a brief second, she thought she saw a flicker of light inside the old house, and maybe, just maybe, a shadow moving behind the curtains. Claire shook her head and went to bed, trying to forget it. But deep down, something didn't feel right. The house wasn't as empty as everyone said. The next morning, Claire tried to forget about the strange light she saw in the old house. Maybe it was her imagination. She had been tired after moving all day. Still, something kept bothering her. When she opened her curtains, her eyes went straight to the house across the street. It stood there, silent and empty, or so it seemed. That evening, things started to feel even stranger. Claire was in her living room reading a book when her cat, Luna, suddenly jumped up and ran to the window. The cat hissed and stared at the old house, its eyes wide like it saw something terrifying. Claire walked over and looked outside, but she saw nothing unusual. The house looked the same, dark and lifeless. She picked up Luna and tried to calm her down, but the cat wouldn't stop growling in the direction of that house. Later that night, as Claire was locking the doors, she heard something. A faint sound, almost like a whisper, coming from outside. She froze. It wasn't the wind, she could hear words, but they were too soft to understand. Slowly, she walked to the window and peeked through the curtain. At first, there was nothing. Then her heart skipped a beat. The upstairs window of the old house had a dim light glowing behind the curtain, and she was sure she saw it move, like someone walking inside. Claire's hands shook as she grabbed her phone. She quickly searched for information about the house, but found nothing helpful. She even texted her neighbor, Mr. Harris, asking if anyone had moved in. His reply came quickly. No one has lived there for 30 years. Don't go near it. Claire stared at her phone in shock. 30 years? Then who or what was inside? Claire could not stop thinking about what she saw. A light in the window. A shadow moving inside. But the house was supposed to be empty for 30 years. She told herself it might have been a reflection, maybe from a passing car. Still, she felt uneasy. The next night, Claire stayed up late. She sat near her window with the lights off, watching the old house. Hours passed, and nothing happened. The street was silent. She was about to go to bed when something caught her eye. The curtain in the upstairs window moved slowly, like someone was pulling it back. Claire held her breath. For a moment, she thought she saw a face, a pale face staring back at her. But when she blinked, the window was dark again. Her phone slipped from her hand as her heart pounded. Did I really see that? Or am I losing my mind? She wanted to run to a neighbor's house, but it was past midnight. Instead, she closed her curtains and tried to calm down. Just then, a sound made her freeze. Tap, tap, tap. It was coming from her own window. Claire's body stiffened. Slowly, she turned her head. Her curtains were moving slightly, as if someone was touching the glass from outside. Gathering her courage, she pulled the curtain aside, but there was nothing. The street was empty. Shaking, Claire locked every door and window in her house. She tried to sleep, but kept hearing things: the faint creak of wood, the soft sound of footsteps on gravel. Every noise made her jump. When her alarm finally rang in the morning, she felt exhausted. Claire told herself she needed answers. This wasn't just a story from the neighbors. Something was in that house, and she was going to find out what. Claire couldn't take it anymore. 2 nights of fear and no answers had pushed her over the edge. She told herself she wasn't a child. This was just an old, empty house. There had to be a simple explanation. Maybe kids were sneaking in to play, or maybe someone was squatting there. She needed to know the truth. That night, the sky was dark and rain fell in thin, cold drops. The street was empty and most houses had their lights off. Claire grabbed a flashlight and put on her jacket. Her heart raced as she crossed the street, every step sounding louder in her ears. When she reached the front gate of the old house, she noticed something strange. The gate wasn't locked. It creaked loudly as she pushed it open. The front door was worse. It was slightly open, swinging gently with the wind, like it was waiting for her. Claire hesitated. Every part of her body screamed to go back, but something stronger pulled her forward. She stepped inside. The air inside was heavy and smelled of dust and rot. The floor creaked under her shoes as she walked in slowly, sweeping her flashlight across the room. Old furniture covered with white sheets stood like ghosts in the darkness. Cobwebs hung from the ceiling. It looked abandoned, but then she saw something that made her blood run cold: footprints. fresh footprints on the dusty floor. Claire followed them slowly. They led toward the hallway and then to the staircase. Her hands were shaking so badly that the flashlight beam jumped all over the walls. She whispered to herself, "Hello? Is anyone here?" No answer. Only silence. She reached the bottom of the stairs and looked up. The darkness above felt alive, as if it was watching her. Suddenly, a floorboard creaked upstairs. Someone was up there. Claire gripped the railing, her breath quick and shallow. She had found what she was looking for. The house wasn't empty. Claire's heart thumped like a drum as she climbed the stairs. Each step groaned under her feet, the sound echoing through the empty house. When she reached the top, she stopped and listened. The silence was thick, but then she heard it, a slow creak, like someone moving in the next room. She tightened her grip on the flashlight and stepped forward. The hallway was narrow, lined with doors on both sides. Most of them were closed. She picked the first one and pushed it open. The room was empty, just old furniture and broken glass on the floor. She checked the second room, nothing there either. As she moved toward the last door, a chill ran down her spine. The door was slightly open, and there was a faint whispering sound coming from inside. Claire's throat felt dry, but she pushed the door wider and stepped in. It was a bedroom, but everything about it felt wrong. The air was colder here, almost freezing. The walls were covered in old photographs, black and white pictures of a family. But every face in those pictures had been scratched out with deep, angry lines. Claire moved closer, her hands shaking. Who would do something like this? Then she saw something that made her blood turn to ice. On the floor, in the middle of the room, was a small pile of candles, burned down to nothing. And next to them was a photograph of her, Claire Morgan. The picture looked new, taken only days ago. Her hands trembled as she picked it up. How was this possible? Who had been inside her house? Suddenly, the whispering grew louder. She spun around, her flashlight trembling. There was no one there, but the sound was all around her. And then, a voice as soft and cold spoke her name. Claire. Her heart stopped. The door slammed shut behind her with a violent crash. Claire's breath came in quick, shaky bursts. She ran to the door and yanked the handle, but it wouldn't move. It was locked from the outside. Her heart raced as the whispering continued, circling around her like cold wind. She turned her flashlight to the walls again, desperate for a way out, and that's when she noticed something strange. One corner of the room had a door. It was smaller than a normal door, almost hidden behind a tall wardrobe. With trembling hands, Claire pushed the wardrobe aside. The door creaked open, revealing a narrow staircase leading down into darkness. The air coming from below was damp and smelled of mold and something else, something metallic, like blood. She didn't want to go down there, but the locked door behind her left her no choice. Step by step, Claire descended into the basement. The stairs groaned under her weight, and every sound seemed to echo forever. When she reached the bottom, her flashlight revealed something that made her knees go weak. The room was filled with candles, all melted into twisted shapes. Strange symbols were drawn on the walls in red, some fresh, some old. And in the middle of the room was a wooden table covered with photographs of her. Claire walked closer, her hands shaking. There were pictures of her shopping, walking to her car, even sitting by her window at night. Someone had been watching her since the day she moved in. Her stomach turned when she saw the oldest photo. It showed her as a child. But how? She had never been here before. On the table lay a leather diary, its pages yellow and torn. Claire opened it with trembling fingers. The handwriting was messy, almost angry. She read the first line out loud. "She will come home, even if I have to wait forever." The next page said, "Claire Morgan belongs to this house." Her blood froze. This wasn't a coincidence. Whoever wrote this knew her name before she even came here. Then, from behind her, a voice whispered again, "Welcome home, Claire." Claire spun around, her flashlight shaking in her hand. The voice had come from the shadows at the far end of the basement. Her beam of light cut through the darkness, but there was nothing there, just the damp walls and the flickering candles. Her chest rose and fell rapidly as panic clawed at her throat. "Who's there?" she shouted, her voice cracking. Silence answered, then a soft laugh. High-pitched, cold, and far too close. Claire's breath hitched. She stepped backward, clutching the flashlight like a weapon. Then she saw it, a figure slowly stepping out of the shadows. It was tall, impossibly thin, its pale skin stretched tight over bones. Its eyes glowed faintly, like dying embers in the dark. But what made Claire freeze in terror was its smile, wide, unnatural, stretching too far across its face. "You came back," the thing whispered, its voice echoing in the cold room. Claire shook her head violently. I don't know you." "Oh, but I know you," it hissed. "I've always known you. You were promised to this house long before you were born." Claire bolted for the stairs, but the door at the top slammed shut with a deafening bang. She clawed at the steps, trying to get away, but the lights from the candles began to dim. The air turned icy as the figure glided closer, its movements unnatural, as if it floated. The diary pages fluttered wildly as if a storm had erupted inside the basement. Claire screamed, pounding on the door until her hands bled. Then everything went black. The next morning, the street was quiet. Neighbors noticed Claire's car still parked outside, but her house looked empty. Days passed, and no one saw her again. Across the street, the old house stood as it always had, silent and forgotten. But if someone looked closely at the upstairs window, they might see something strange. A pale face staring out. And if they listened very carefully at night, they would hear a voice whispering from the darkness. "You finally came home." Thank you all for your encouragement. If you are new to this channel, please subscribe to the channel and like the video. Thank you.